Hi everyone, I'm here with Dr. Jeanne Hoffman, whom I've known for 10, 15 years now at least, something like that. I'm useless at remembering those sorts of things, but for a reasonable amount of time. And Jeanne entered my world as a futurist of renown, and she also very kindly taught into some futures courses that we were running as a graduate certificate through the University of the Sunshine Coast back in 2011, 12, 13, something like that, before she very sensibly ran away to Taiwan because the food there is great, and she taught at Tam Kang University. So, Jeanne, I'm going to let you do the elevator pitch for how do you introduce yourself, and so that people get a sense of who you are before we launch into a few questions.
Okay. Well, firstly, thank you, Marcus, for having me here today. I really appreciate it. I'm very excited, and I'm really thankful for the opportunity to have this conversation with you. And I also want to thank everybody who is watching today. I appreciate the time that all of you are taking to do this course. And I just love that you are doing this, because I think it's going to change your life. And I think it's going to be an incredibly powerful experience for everyone. And so I'm very excited to be part of that. So thank you, Marcus. So the question really is, well, if you want to think about how do I describe myself, that's a tough one. But I can tell you how I got into futures, if you want to talk about that first.
Please, that would be great, because that's question one anyway, so go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it depends who I'm talking to, how I describe myself sometimes. But how I got into futures. I was a public servant for about 13 years, and I worked in Queensland state government. So I worked in transport, TransLink, main roads, transport and main roads, and I've been through many, many MOG changes. I came into the public service as an economist, so I have a background there. And so as part of that, I worked firstly in like divisional performance and planning, and then later corporate strategy and planning, strategy and performance, performance and planning, policy and planning, any kind of combination you can absolutely imagine, I have done it. So all of those things. But the way that I came into future studies was that, now this was probably about in 2010, I'm not sure, it was so long ago, but I was working in main roads, and we were having a 5-year major review of our strategic plan. So this was kind of a big deal. And my director had hired Sahel and Aitula to come and help us think about, what the strategic plan means and think about the future, et cetera. And I think we were just about to go through a MOG change as well. So Sahel came in, and, he gave us a couple of readings, 2 readings that we needed to do. And the first one was his 6 Pillars Futures Thinking for Transformation, which I think was published in 2008.
Yep,
so
right.
Still fairly new by then. And he also gave us another reading that was, I think, some work he'd done with Brisbane City Council. And it was about how they had imagined Brisbane to be developed with a kilometer wide parklands around the city. Of course, that didn't happen, but the discussion around what that would look like, and this was a very serious plan that didn't happen. So anyway, reading these 2 articles, working with Sahel, having already had 10 plus years in strategic planning and performance, it absolutely melted my brain.
I like that, melting brains.
It absolutely, I can still feel it, okay? So this idea around multiple futures, around nonlinear futures, around layered realities and worldviews and inner stories, and the mapping, the anticipating, all of this kind of thing. It just opened my world. And it literally changed my life. It made my life go in a completely different direction, for which I'm grateful. So then how I came into that is into future studies is then I decided to transition out of my job in a very high-level job in government. I do not recommend that as a financial strategy. For the rest of me, it was the right thing to do. So I started to do a PhD in futures of China, was what I chose. And I also have an international relations background as well. So as part of that, as part of my study, I went to Tongkang University and just had an incredible experience there. But they have a program where I heard about 125,000 students have been through. And so that's an incredibly powerful and amazing program that they have there. And so I was very happy to join that. So I worked there. I was offered a position after I finished my PhD. I worked there for about 8 years or so until COVID happened. Anybody remember that? It was such a long time ago. And yeah, with the lockdowns and everything like that, it became a little bit hard to travel. And my husband lives here, and I decided to come back to Australia a little over a year ago and sort of begin a new chapter, as it were, back in.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a brief version of how I got into futures.
It's a great story. The structures, the desire for certainty and so on that's built into strategic planning is really comes up against a whole different worldview when it encounters futures thinking. And the richness that Sahale brings to it is amazing. So yeah, it was you had the best tour guide, you might say, of the future field with Sahale there.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's great.
And I'll say too, and even when I do some courses with the Australian Executive or the Executive Leadership Academy.
Yeah, that's right.
A little bit of work with is, it's still a real challenge for a lot of senior executives and things, because they really do see the world in quite this narrow, but they're very frustrated by that, and they know that things need to change. So when we do this work, yes, it does start to open up new pathways, but it needs to be more deeply embedded, I think.
And in a sense, you're touching on something there, Jeannie, that it actually is foundational to my thinking. I've got to do this Futures 101 because entering especially if you're going to do a PhD or something in it, a lot of the assumptions we have about certainty and pathways and so on get deeply challenged. And I've seen, because I've been doing it for quite a while now, quite a number of students take a long time, quite a few years sometimes, to really surrender, you might say, but also open up and grow their own confidence or authority in a futures space. So there they are trying to manage all the prerequisites of a PhD or whatever it might be, and yet the future stuff is, as you said, melting your brain. It's dissolving a whole bunch of stuff, and it requires a different communicative practice. It requires a sense of trust that, hey, I can do this. A sense of curiosity. What does it mean? What does it mean to have, let's say, to CLA and find the metaphors that drive change?
Yeah.
And also hold us prisoner. What does that all mean? Those sorts of things. So I think what you're describing there is, equally appropriate for, people thinking to do more serious engaged studies.
Yeah. And I have a story about that too that I'd like to share with everyone. And so when you sort of think about, well, why do I do it, and why am I still doing it, and and I love that surrender, because it's a good word to it, because I struggled for years with surrendering into it. It is hard. We're quite fixed in our thinking. But when I do this work, I see, and certainly as teaching, I see firsthand what I love so much about futures is I see firsthand how this transforms lives, including my own. I have an experience from a participant of a workshop that I did with Sahel and Ivana in December just of last year. So, and she emailed, she described this experience to me in an email that I received just about 2 days ago, I think. So it took her that long to process what had happened within this workshop. So anyway, so I'll just kind of summarize a little bit of what she went through. And before the workshop, she was in a really kind of a dark place personally. She'd been bullied out of her job. She was in a very high-level job in government. She had a lot of, I think she had an elderly parent who was, unfortunately having a lot of problems, at that time. And she retreated into what she called a cognitive sanctuary that seemed like a really nice, safe space, a space of protection, but ultimately became quite suffocating to her. And so during this workshop that we had and going through the process that we were doing, she said that she felt kind of by mid-morning, so it wasn't that long, but, kind of by mid-morning on that first day, she felt herself coming back to life. Right? And through this process, she said she felt room to breathe again. She felt she was able now to reimagine her story, and that she felt new possibilities emerging from this. And she said she slept really great that night. It was really nice for her. And the next day, she saw a job that came up that she wouldn't normally have applied for. It wasn't something she was necessarily looking for, but she said she felt this incredible lightness, and she felt freed from this weight of this kind of used future that she'd been living in for this time. And so, she decided to apply for this role that she might not otherwise have considered. She just had an interview on Monday about it. I'm not sure how it went. I'm sure it went well. But, this is really special. So this is why future studies is so important to me. And this is why I do what I do. Because when we think about future studies, and I think this is the real struggle that a lot of people have, and I did coming into it, as I said, my background is from strategy and planning and performance. But, futures work isn't about strategy. It's not about scenarios. I mean, of course, those are part of it. But it's about creating the conditions for people to breathe. It's about creating those conditions for people to dream. It's about creating the conditions for people to take formative steps into their preferred futures. And so I can't think of anything better to do with your
I've got goosebumps all over. I'm going, oh, what a story, and your reflections from that. It is about creating an open space for us to basically grow, and in many respects, that futures demands of us a commitment to our own richness and our own capacity.
Yes.
And that's why in my new book on neo-humanism, I talk about love so much, because there's love is that organizing principle that pulls it all together. It's got nothing to do with romantic love, though you might be romantically in love with a tree or something, I don't know. But it's that special gratitude for life that comes from a broader engagement with our human possibility within a temporal framework, where there are always going to be structures or conditions around us that hold us in place. Man, woman, whether you're gay, queer, whatever that might be, white or indigenous, and so on, all of those things. And we also have the structures of law and order, schools and institutions. They're all there, but we tend to see them as given and concrete, that was what you were in when you were working in state government.
Yeah, that they're immutable.
That's right. And No, it's kind of like that funny movie, Men Who Talk to Goats, was it, or whatever it was called?
I'm not sure what movie you're watching.
No, no, it's a brilliant
Oh,
movie.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that one, the CIA or something,
Yeah,
or
CIA, and they're trying to sort of, and at the very end, he runs through a wall. Whoever one of these
oh,
characters runs through that wall, and it's the end of the thing.
yeah,
Sort of like the wall. Yeah, it's there, but it's only there because I accept that it's there, type thing.
yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know. I mean, now we're getting a little flaky, but to me,
Yeah, no, I like that as a metaphor, and I think, you talk about love, but it's also about, that kind of self-love that we have, because
absolutely,
teachers' work really is. We talk about it, not just the external world, what's happening externally, all those emerging issues, the trends, the structures, all of those sort of things, but it really is about the internal and how, we see the world differently, and how by seeing the world differently, we can create the change we want to see.
yeah,
And that's a really profound thing. And to actually take action to do that yourself, within yourself, that's where I think the power of futures lies.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow,
So,
that's fantastic.
yeah.
In the sense you've touched on, were there obstacles for you getting into this thing, into this world of futures? Did you encounter any?
To get into the field, no, not so much. Like I said, I mean, I was very lucky
Yeah,
to to be guided by Sahel and by yourself, because you helped me quite a bit too when I was I even still doing my PhD? And I can't remember, and doing some work up with you and
yeah,
Sunny Coast. And so, that was really important and deeply moving for me. But, if I think about obstacles in the field for us now,
yeah. Today, yes,
and certainly I see a few. I mean, there's a few. There's we don't have any kind of established undergraduate program anywhere, and so what we have is very limited. So again, thank you for taking this initiative, because it's incredibly important doing this work.
yeah,
I mean, there are courses at I think the Australian Public Sector Service, whatever academy, runs some things, but for public sector employees, we just lost the program at
at
Southern
South
Queensland.
Queensland, yeah.
Swinburne used to have a program, but they lost that, but limited there. So,
UTS has something. They have something
oh yeah,
about aspirational futures because Amanda Reeves was talking to me yesterday, and she
yeah,
teaches into that with Claire Marshall and others who are
yeah,
these are wonderful people. Yeah,
yes, yeah.
but
So,
it's only it's only one course in a suite of master's stuff. So
yeah. So it is a little bit limited. And, and that's just at the university level. We don't really see anything down at any, I'm not even sure how to say it, but at kind of the lower levels, learn, for youth futures, for younger people,
yeah,
really learning futures thinking as a life skill, because
yeah,
that's also what it is.
yeah,
And, and I know this from just my time in Taiwan, teaching with the quite young university students as well as master students, and some of the studies that I've done with some of my colleagues, Guoha Chen and stuff, is how important this is. Measurable, important. We can measure it if, for those who need the data.
yeah.
What an incredible change this makes in young people's lives, and how they are more optimistic, how they believe in themselves more, how they believe they can create change,
Yep.
how they are more engaged
Mm.
with a broader ways of thinking, with creative solutions to some of the problems that we have. And so this is some of the issues I see. But look, so your program is great. And we do see in Australia there's a lot of futurists around.
Yeah, they are.
We are kind of a small market in Australia. I think in some ways it's slightly mature, because we do have a lot of government-sponsored futures initiatives, and Australia is quite unique in that way, which is really important. If we look around at New Zealand, for example, if we look around to the South Pacific community, the work that we've done in Asia, my work in Taiwan, the work in the Asia Pacific Futurist Network, even now the Dubai Futures Forum, there's so much happening around the world. I mean, this is, futures around the world is huge and it's growing. And so it's really quite an exciting time, I think, for futures. And so for those people taking the course, I mean, this is it. Don't just think about just your own little neighborhood. That's great if you do. I mean, it's
it's a good place to start.
Exactly. But it's such a global networked. It's huge. But in some ways we're a little bit on the back foot in Australia. So and I know your students will know about this. That we, you, me, Alyssa Farrow, and Cheryl Doig from New Zealand, we are developing this Oceania Futures and Foresight Symposium, 3rd and 4th of April. So make sure you all go.
Along.
And so, we're trying to kind of connect that community and, build that community within our region, which is Oceania.
Important work, I think.
Yeah. And look at kind of what's unique about futures in our region and within Australia. And I can talk about that a little bit if you want to, because it's quite, we have something quite unique here. And I think
say more, please, Jeannie. We will have to wrap it up,
Okay.
but I really want to hear this.
Okay. Yeah. Look, one of the things that we have that we're so privileged to have, and that's so special for us, is that we have those deep time perspectives of Aborigines and of the Pacifica cultures and Torres Strait Islander cultures, Maori cultures, and that really focus on sustainability, around custodianship, around interconnectedness with the land. And that is deeply powerful. We also live in the Asia Pacific. And so Australian futures thinking often engages with these regional dynamics that we have. We see that quite a bit. We see as key themes, again, flowing from our own climate here, our own place in the world, as well as from the Australian mentality, or sorry, the Aboriginal mentalities, is around climate and sustainability, right?
Yeah.
And this is important, and different perspectives around time. We do have a tradition of government-led futures initiatives. CSIRO has done a lot of work. Like I said, we now have, I saw this. I don't know. I've got a couple issues, but there is this
Policy fit for the future.
policy fit for the future. Oops, I don't know. I'm sure you can see
It's
that.
gone blurry again.
Yeah, sorry, but I'm sure you get it. So, this is something that's been done by the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. So that's just been recently done. So there's a few little things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't talk about future studies in Australia with really talking about the impact of Sahel, Ini Aitula's work, and, how he has shaped so much of the field and so much of how we do things, and your work as well, around, and Jose's, and I'm getting in trouble for
Ivana's done some amazing work. Her feminist futures work is very powerful.
Absolutely.
That's Ivana Milojevic, Dr. Ivana Milojevic, yeah.
Yeah. And so, with that, shaping that field around, or shaping our field around, participatory futures.
Yep.
Around narrative-driven futures, story driven, the deep inner stories that we have, and uncovering that, around the deep structural change methods that we use here. And it's quite different to a lot of other places. So everyone who's been working in Richard Slot, everyone, who
Peter Hayward with his
absolutely, yeah.
future pod. I mean, it's such a great gift.
Yeah.
One.
All of you esteemed elders of futures in Australia, we really do owe a great debt to you. And, even I kind of mentioned before, a little bit of our isolation is always one of those things where sometimes there's a little bit of benefit in that too.
Yes,
It creates that space for independence, creates that space for unconventional approaches to experimentation within futures thinking. And, I think we're quite open to new ways of thinking and doing new things and using that. And so, yeah, I mean, we've got so much going on here, and I think we need to let the world know a little bit more about what it is.
Maybe people who are taking this course will go out there and be apostles to,
They absolutely will be, yeah.
to the next also to the next generations, of course, because this is something that's intergenerational, and I think that's one of the things that excites me is actually getting young people involved, skilled up, but also just excited about, a space like this. I think that's really important.
It is exciting, and every time I start talking about it, I get really excited,
Well, we can tell, Jeannie. I think that's really good. But we're going to have to stop here. I'm going to, just so you all know, we're going to drag Jeannie into our course, and she's very happily going to try and join us when we have sessions or whatever. And, so we'll have to work that one out, Jeannie, but I think that would be wonderful. Because futures is not about one person. It's about relationships and community. And I think that's something that comes through very strongly.
Yes, thank you, Marcus. And I'd like to even leave with some of your own words, if I may.
My words? Okay, sure.
Because I remember this, and I used to teach it to my students because I loved it so much, so poetic. Like I said, future studies, it's about this, we're creating the conditions to breathe, we're creating the conditions to dream, to transform. And ultimately, as you have said, Marcus, this makes life more charming. No. And what could be better than that is to make my life more charming. So I'll leave with your words.
Thank you so much, Jeannie, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Till next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.